My name is Captain Jake Holloway. I'm 38 years old, and I serve in the United States Army. 2 weeks ago, I came home from an 11-month deployment overseas. I've seen things in the field that most people would only hear about in briefings or read about in reports. I've had mornings where the sound of wind over sand felt louder than gunfire, but nothing felt as loud as the silence that met me when I stepped back into my house. It was a strange kind of quiet. Not peaceful, just off. Like someone had vacuumed all the life out of the walls but left the furniture standing. No music playing in the kitchen, no candle burning, like she used to do before I got home. I told myself it was because I came back early. My unit cut the tour short. But even so, the air didn't feel like it was waiting for me. Megan wasn't there when I arrived. No note, no text. Just her keys still on the hook and the laundry half folded on the couch. At first, I didn't think too much about it. She's a nurse. Long shifts happen. But as the hours passed, that gut feeling started to settle in. The kind of feeling you get just before things go sideways on patrol. You learn not to ignore those feelings. I walked through the house slowly, like I was clearing a building in Kandahar. One room at a time, one breath at a time. Everything looked normal, but everything felt wrong, like the house itself had been holding its breath since I left. I picked up one of her sweaters from the back of a chair, and it didn't smell like her anymore. Just detergent and distance. Maybe I was just tired, jet lag, nerves. Re-entry into civilian life is always a weird transition. But this was different. This wasn't about readjusting. It was about reading the signs. And though I had no intel, no confrontation, no evidence yet, something told me I'd stepped into a place where something had already broken. I didn't know it that morning, but my marriage had already ended. I just hadn't gotten the memo yet. You don't get to be a captain in the Army without learning to read between the lines. Subtext can save your life. But back home, when it came to Megan, I let things slide. Maybe that's my guilt talking now. Maybe it always was. But even when I was halfway across the world, I started noticing the shift. It was the way she answered my video calls, short, rushed, sometimes with her hair barely brushed, like she hadn't planned on seeing me that day. I'd ask how things were going, and she'd smile just long enough to say fine before glancing off screen like she was watching the clock. I told myself it was just the stress. Being home alone, managing the bills, the loneliness. That's what I wanted to believe. There were missed calls too. Times I'd call during the window we always used, and she wouldn't pick up. No message, just a text hours later saying she fell asleep or had a late shift. And I believed her. Not because I was naive, but because trust is what you're supposed to give someone you love. I thought if I kept showing up, even from a distance, that'd be enough. The bank statements came later. We kept a shared account, mostly for household stuff, groceries, gas, dog food. But I started seeing charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, designer brands I didn't even know she liked, car rentals. When I asked her about it during one of our calls, she said a friend was borrowing the car and she covered the cost as a favor. Said she just needed to treat herself sometimes, retail therapy and all that. I let it go. Even after I came home, I kept letting things go. Like the perfume she started wearing that I didn't recognize. Or how she changed the passcode on her phone, said it was because of some hospital data policy. I didn't push. I wanted to believe we were just relearning each other after time apart. That the space between us was from distance, not damage. I remember the night she stayed out late and didn't text until after midnight. She said she fell asleep at a friend's place after a wine night. I almost drove there. I almost let the anger win. But I stopped myself. Told myself this was what love meant. Patience, grace, giving her room without making her feel cornered. Now I see I was giving her cover. I wasn't blind. I saw the patterns. I just didn't want them to mean what they obviously meant. Because the moment I let myself believe she was drifting towards someone else, it meant our story was over. And I wasn't ready for that. I thought I was holding on for both of us. But maybe I was just the only one still holding on at all. The message came in just after 9. I was sitting in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold a long time ago. The house was quiet again. That same kind of quiet that had greeted me when I first got back. I wasn't expecting anything, certainly not her name on my screen. It was Lindsay, Megan's best friend since college. We hadn't talked much over the years, just the usual holiday hellos, some laughs at barbecues. So, When her name lit up my phone, I froze. I opened the message without thinking. It was short, careful, like she had typed and deleted it a dozen times. She said she didn't know how to tell me, but she thought I deserved the truth. Megan was involved with someone, her boss. It had been going on for a while. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there staring at the screen. It felt like everything around me had tilted slightly, like the floor wasn't as solid as it had been a second before. But outside, the world was still. The dishwasher hummed. A car passed by on the street. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. But something inside me went quiet. I typed 2 words. Thank you. That was it. No questions, no anger, just a hollow kind of acceptance. I don't even remember putting the phone down. I think I just kept holding it, like if I stayed still long enough, maybe the truth wouldn't fully land. There was no explosion, no outburst, just the slow, suffocating weight of knowing that everything I had suspected was now real, confirmed, by someone who didn't want to be involved but couldn't stay silent anymore. That told me everything. Lindsay wasn't betraying Megan. She was trying to save me, or maybe just give me a fighting chance. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at nothing. The coffee went colder, the lights stayed off, and in that silence, the shape of my life started to shift. It wasn't rage that came first. It was absence, like someone had reached inside and quietly turned off the lights. She walked in like her bones were too heavy, dropped her purse on the floor, not even caring where it landed. Her eyes met mine just for a second, then drifted past me like I was a piece of furniture. There was no panic in her face, no guilt, just a kind of drained emptiness, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks and had finally stopped trying. I asked if we were going to talk, but she didn't answer. She just sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. I stood there, waiting, bracing for denial, or excuses, but none came. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. She said it like a sigh that had been trapped in her lungs for years. Yes, there was someone else. Yes, it was her boss. She didn't look angry. She didn't look anything. Just tired. Like holding it in had worn her down to the core. It wasn't the betrayal that cut the deepest. It was that she looked relieved to finally say it. Like she'd been drowning, and this was her first breath of air. I kept expecting some flicker of emotion in her voice. Shame. Regret. Something. But there was nothing there except exhaustion. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She just had nothing left to fight with. And somehow, that broke me more than any screaming match could have. Because I remembered when she used to light up around me, when her laugh filled rooms. And now, she was just faded. Not cruel, not defiant, just done. And that kind of silence is louder than anything you can scream. I stood there in the hallway long after she walked into the bedroom. The air in the house felt stale, like it hadn't been breathed in for days. I looked around and saw everything exactly where it should be, but it didn't feel like home anymore. For a few seconds I just stood still, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter like it could anchor me. Then, without warning, I picked up the nearest pillow and threw it hard against the wall. It didn't break anything, didn't make much of a sound, but it was enough. Enough to let something out before it ate me alive. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, then another. Come on, Holloway, not now. This isn't the battlefield, but it sure as hell feels like one, and I'd survived worse than this. It was time to move. First thing I did was sit down with my laptop. I pulled up our bank accounts, checked every transaction line by line. I already knew what I'd find, but knowing didn't make it easier. She'd been spending freely. Hotels, dinners, one payment to a boutique that sold watches I couldn't afford on my salary, all while telling me she was just tired from work. I clicked through everything, froze the joint accounts, transferred what I legally could into a new one. Then I called my credit card company and flagged the charges. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just moved. I made a list. Lawyers, investigators. I knew a few guys from base who'd been through ugly divorces. I called one of them, Hank, told him what happened. He didn't say much, just listened and then said, "Get ahead of it. Don't wait. She already made her move. Now make yours." So I did. I documented everything, pulled screenshots, saved receipts, started a private folder with names, dates, details. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I wasn't looking for revenge. But if she had the audacity to dismantle our marriage in silence, I had every right to protect what was left of me. The hardest part wasn't the logistics. It was pretending to sleep in the same house with someone who had already checked out. Every breath she took on the other side of that wall felt like a reminder that I wasn't enough for her anymore. But I didn't let that stop me. I stuck to the plan. I deleted old photos from my phone, not out of rage, out of necessity. Each one felt like a lie now, and I couldn't afford to carry those lies with me if I wanted to move forward. At one point, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My uniform wasn't on, but I still stood the same, back straight, eyes steady. I didn't recognize the man in the mirror, but I respected him. He wasn't broken, he was preparing. That night, I didn't sleep. I strategized. In war, hesitation gets people killed. In betrayal, hesitation leaves scars. I wasn't going to let this define me, not the pain, not the loss. This was the part where I decided who I was going to be next, and I chose strength. Quiet, focused, unshakable strength. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just scrolling, half distracted, trying to pass time before the lawyer called back. But then I saw it. A post from a mutual acquaintance, someone we both knew from her work. It was a group shot at a rooftop restaurant. They were all smiling. In the back, barely cropped in, was Megan, her hand in his, the same hand that used to hold mine, like it meant something. I clicked on the photo and zoomed in. There was no mistaking it. Her laugh, the way she leaned into him, like she belonged there. She wasn't hiding. He wasn't hiding. They looked comfortable, familiar, like they'd done this a dozen times before and never once considered what it might look like to the world. Or maybe they didn't care. I searched his profile next. I didn't know much about the guy, just a name, Brian, her boss. The one she said respected her talents, who gave her long hours and endless deadlines. His page was open. And there she was again. Another photo. This time just the two of them, standing outside a bar, his arm around her waist like it belonged there. Her smile didn't look guilty. It looked happy. And that's what gutted me most. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was the ease of it, the openness, the audacity to live that lie in daylight, with cameras and hashtags and likes, as if the life we built had been background noise to something more exciting. I wasn't angry yet, not fully. What I felt in that moment was quieter than rage, but heavier, like someone had laid a weight across my chest and whispered, "You were never enough." I closed the browser and stared at the wall. There was no yelling, no breakdown, just a slow burn that started in the center of my chest and worked its way outward. This wasn't just about love lost. It was about dignity, about how easily they discarded it. I walked into her office building just after 9. People were still settling in, coffee in hand, eyes on screens. It looked like any other Monday, but for me, it was the day everything would shift. The front desk recognized me from past visits. I gave a polite nod, kept walking. I held the envelope tight in my hand. Inside was everything. Photos, transaction records, screenshots, all printed, labeled, and arranged like I was preparing for a briefing, not a personal ambush. I moved past the stairs. A few people glanced up, probably wondering why I looked familiar. I didn't meet their eyes. I wasn't here for them. I was here for the truth. When I reached HR, the assistant looked up, surprised. She asked if I had an appointment. I said I didn't need one. My voice was calm, steady, the way I'd speak in a report. No emotion, just facts. Linda and Charles were the names on the door. I asked to see both. After a beat of hesitation, she buzzed them. They came out together, their smiles already faltering. I could see the shift happen in real time, the moment they realized I wasn't here socially. We stepped into a small conference room. I laid the folder on the table. I said I had information they needed to see, that it involved an executive, that it involved Megan. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I stated. They opened the folder. The silence thickened. Their eyes darted between pages. Their hands stiffened. Nobody spoke for a full minute. Then Linda cleared her throat, said they'd need time to review. I nodded, told them I expected a formal investigation, not because I wanted revenge, because it was the right thing to do. As I left the room, I could feel the buzz ripple through the building. People had started whispering. Word was spreading. I walked past desks, past curious stares, past one guy who looked at me like he already knew something big had broken loose. And in that moment, I didn't feel small or broken or betrayed. I felt composed, not proud, but centered. I had taken back control of my story. of my name, of my worth. The ride down in the elevator was quiet. I looked at my reflection in the metal doors. Same face, same eyes. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't carrying her lies anymore. Outside, the air felt lighter. The envelope was gone, but the weight was too. I had done what needed to be done. Not for her, not for them, for me. I didn't know what the fallout would be. But I knew one thing. I hadn't let her betrayal define me. I had defined myself. The sun had dipped low by the time I heard her key in the door. The sound was soft, hesitant, like even the lock knew something was off. I stayed seated on the couch, staring at nothing, letting the silence speak first. She stepped in with cautious steps. Her eyes scanned the room like she wasn't sure if I'd be there. She clutched her bag to her chest like it was armor. She opened her mouth, but I didn't speak. Not yet. I waited. I needed to see her without filters, without explanations, just her. And in that moment, she looked small, not guilty, not angry, just tired. She asked if we could talk. I shook my head once. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said in texts, pictures, silence, and tears I refused to shed in front of her. She stood there, frozen, then slowly walked to the bedroom. I heard the suitcase unzip, the sound of drawers sliding open, clothes rustling. Every noise was sharp, final. The house didn't echo like it used to. I didn't follow her. I sat still, breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth, a rhythm I'd learned in combat to stay calm. Now it helped me stay human. She passed me once, arms full of clothes. She paused by the door, looked at me like maybe I'd stop her. I didn't. She went back in, packed more. Her movements were robotic, no pleading, no tantrum, just acceptance. When she returned, her voice cracked. She said my name like it hurt to speak it, asked if I really wanted her to go. I met her eyes for the first time in days, the same eyes I once adored. Now, all I saw was distance. I said yes. Simple. Final. Not cruel, just honest. She didn't cry. Her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was relief. I'll never know. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase and stood for a second longer, then turned and walked to the door. Her footsteps were quiet. I didn't watch her go. I listened. The door clicked shut behind her, a small sound, but it echoed through every room. I stayed there a while. The quiet didn't feel as heavy, not anymore. It felt like space to breathe, to think, to exist again on my own terms. I didn't hate her, I didn't love her, not in that moment. What I felt was the absence of everything we used to be, and somehow that brought peace. It was over, not in flames, not with shouting, just a quiet ending to a loud pain, and I could finally begin.